In section 1-1, we discussed integers and their opposites. Opposite integers resulted in a sum or change of 0. We defined an integer as any whole number on a number line including 0 and negative numbers. In this section 1-3, we will explore how to add integers. We will look at adding integers with the same sign and also adding integers with different signs. Let's start at the top with the key concept. On the left-hand side, we're going to focus on adding integers with the same sign. What that means is that they will both have a positive or we're adding two numbers with both negative signs. So in the example at the top, they're giving you a -6 and we're adding it to a -12. What you're going to do is find the absolute value of each number and then add the absolute values together and keep the sign. So the absolute value of -36 is 36. It's 36 spaces away from 0. That's why it's positive. And -12, the absolute value of -12 is 12. And that's because -12 is 12 spaces away from 0. Once you know the absolute values of your numbers, you're going to add the 36 and the 12 together to get 48. Because you're adding integers with the same sign, you're going to keep the sign. So -36 plus -12, which is our original problem, is equal to -48. Now the rule changes a little bit when we're adding integers with different signs. In this case, you will find the difference, not the sum, of the absolute values. So if we have this problem, a +18 plus a -14, those are opposite signs being added together. You're going to start off the same though. Find the absolute value of both numbers. So the absolute value of 18 is 18. Because 18 is 18 spaces away from 0. And the absolute value of -14 is 14, because -14 is 14 spaces away from 0. Now, because these are opposite signs, you're not going to add them together. You're going to subtract them instead. So 18 minus 14 is 4. Now here's the big rule that you have to remember. You need to use the sign of the greater absolute value when adding integers with different signs. So again, if we look at the absolute value of 18 is 18, and the absolute value of -14 is 14. 18 is bigger than 14. So we go back to the original problem, and we see that 18 was positive. So the final answer will be a +4. So think of it this way. If you have $18, since it's positive, and think about this plus here, we could substitute for that symbol some words to help us understand how this reads. Of course, we could use the word and. We could use the word words in addition to. We could also use the word together. So if you have $18 and, we'll use the word and here, you lose 14 or maybe you spend 14, well, how much would you have left? You would still have a positive $4. It's your money. You didn't lose that 4. You lost 14 of the 18. Next, we'll go on to the Do You Understand section. The essential question for this section: how do you use what you know about absolute value to add integers? Please write this down. If you need a few more moments, go ahead and pause the video, continue to write down the information, and then start again when you're ready to move on. To answer this question, 2 points. Number 1, add absolute values and use the sign of the add-ins when adding integers with the same sign. And that's what we did up here in the example on the left. So if we're adding a negative 36 and we're adding a negative 12, think about what negatives could represent in this situation. Maybe it's spending money. You spend $36 and remember, you can use the word and here for this plus sign. You spend another $12. Well, you're going to end up spending $48. So the negative in this situation is referring to spending money. Second point, find the difference of the absolute values and use the sign of the add-in with the greater absolute value when adding integers with different signs. And that information goes along with this example at the top, where maybe you have money to start and then you're spending some. You're going to subtract, find the difference, and then keep the sign of whichever absolute value was larger. So in this case, you have more money than you're going to spend. So you would have a positive $4 left. Question number 2, reasoning. How can you tell the sign of the sum of a positive and negative integer without doing any calculations? Take a moment and write that down. In this question, we're dealing with that second example from the top where we're adding integers with different signs. What you will do without having to do any calculation is just look at which of the absolute values is greater, and then just keep that sign. Okay, that will be the sign of the sum. Okay, and then number 3, model with math. How would you use a number line to determine the sum of two negative integers? Please write that down. So you will start at either negative integer and move left the absolute value of the other integer. So I have an example here. Go ahead and write down the example. You'll see we're going to add two negatives as is described here in the question, and then go ahead and draw this number line. Now you'll notice that my 0 is over here on the far right, and that's because in this limited space here, we're going to be adding two negatives. So we're really focused on the left-hand side of the 0 for our number line here, okay? So what you're going to do is you will start, and there's two ways to do this. So you can start at -3 and then just go another -4, and you end up at -7, okay? Or what you'll see, especially in this workbook and on the PSSAs, we're going to start at 0 because the beginning there is no value, and we're going to go from 0 to our -3, which would be -1, 2, 3. It would be here. So we're going to draw an arrow, and we're going to get to a -3. From there, we're going to pick up our pencil, and we're going to start another arrow right above it, continuing from that -3. We're going to move another 4 spaces to the left. So we'll be at 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to end up here. So again, this was a -3 and then a -4. And we end up right here, which is a value of -7. So when we were doing some visual learning examples, we had some examples where you had the two arrows, and I said that the first arrow toward the bottom represents your first action. So the first action was a value of -3. And remember, this means and or in addition to that, we have a -4, but that's going to start where the -3 left off. And then, of course, the result is -7. Okay, moving to a couple example problems. Number 4, Sarah bought a bike that cost $260. She had a coupon that was worth $55 off the cost of any bike. Use the expression 260 plus a -55 to find how much Sarah paid for the bike. So the bike has a value in the store of $260. That's what the store wants. But they're willing to take off $55 off the price, they have to advertise a sale to make it a more reasonable purchase. Now, we know that if you're saving money, it's going to come off the cost. But if we didn't have the situation here right now for us, and we just saw this problem, it could get confusing because of all the signs that we have. Okay, so you have to remember that we're going to add a positive and a negative integer. So the rule is, when adding integers with different signs, find the difference of the absolute values. And then you're going to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. So let's go ahead, and since we're just learning this, we're going to write the rule at the top. So here we have opposite signs. You're going to subtract the absolute values. And then we're going to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. So these are different. The absolute value of 260, which is just how many spaces away, or what's the distance from 260 to 0 on a number line, that would be 260. And the absolute value of negative 55, again, how many spaces away from negative 55 is the number 0, and that would be 55 spaces. And then we're going to find the difference between those two numbers. We get 205. And then the last step would be, look back at these numbers, and since 260 is farthest away from 0, we're going to take the sign of this number, which is positive. So this would stay 205, not negative 205. Number 5, a shark is swimming 60 feet below the surface of the ocean. So if this is the surface of the ocean, the surface would be at 0 feet. Anything below the surface is a negative number. So there is a fish that is 25 feet deeper in the water than the shark. Use the expression negative 60 plus negative 25 to describe the fish's location relative to the surface of the ocean. Here we are adding together two negatives. So when you add a negative to another negative, you get a larger negative. Again, you're going to add the absolute values, okay? So the absolute value of negative 60 is just 60. The absolute value of negative 25 is 25. If you add these two together, you're going to get 85. So add them together, get 85. Now the rule is, if you have the same sign, you're going to add the absolute values which we just did, and then you're going to keep the sign of the two numbers. And they were both negative, so the answer would be negative 85 feet. So what that means is that it's 85, this fish is 85 feet below the surface. Number 6. The high temperature one day was 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Then the temperature dropped 23 degrees during the night. Does the expression 30 plus negative 23 represent the temperature at night? And explain. So this would be yes. Because a drop in temperature is negative. So you're going to start at 30 degrees. And then, so remember the plus is like an and. The second action was the drop in temperature. So what do you get? It doesn't ask that question, but you would have the absolute value of 30. Absolute value of 30 is 30. The absolute value of negative 23 is 23. And if you would subtract these two numbers, so here we're going to subtract, it kind of blends in here, you would get 7 degrees. Okay, and then since the greater absolute value is the 30, which is positive, this would be a positive 7 degrees. Again, this was just a yes or no question. Did that expression represent the temperature at night? And again, it would be true. This concludes the notes for section 1-3. Have a great day.